1. You're 22, and somewhere between the diploma photo and your first paycheck, you decided hard work was the whole answer. Nobody sat you down and told you that. It's just what everyone around you believed. So you believed it too, without ever really testing it. You show up early, stay late. You take pride in being tired, like exhaustion itself was proof you were doing something right. Your parents are proud, your resume looks busy, and somewhere quietly underneath all of it, you assume that if you just keep doing this, keep grinding, keep showing up, eventually the money will follow, the way it's supposed to, the way it did for people you grew up hearing about. Your friend from college takes the same job title at the same company for the same starting salary. On paper, your lives look identical, but he does something you don't notice for a while. He spends his evening, the same evenings you spend recovering from the day, learning something most people find boring, not a passion, not a dream, just a specific, technical, unglamorous skill that almost nobody wants to sit through the tutorials for. He's not doing it because he loves it. He's doing it because he looked around and realized nobody else was willing to. You spend those same evenings the way most reasonable people would, resting. You tell yourself you earned it. You worked hard today, and hard work is supposed to be enough, isn't it? That's the story you were handed. Put in the hours, keep your head down, and life rewards effort. Nobody ever told you effort without direction is just motion. You don't feel behind. You don't feel like anything is wrong. You just feel tired, and tired feels like proof, and proof feels like enough. A year passes. Then something happens that quietly rearranges things. Your friend gets pulled into a project nobody else on the team could handle. Not because he's smarter than everyone, not because he worked more hours than you did, but because he built something almost by accident. Two ordinary skills stacked together into a combination nobody else had bothered to build. Alone, neither skill made him special. Together, they made him nearly impossible to replicate. You watch this happen from a few desks away, and something in your chest tightens, quietly. The kind of feeling you don't say out loud, because you're not even sure what to call it yet. You're still doing the job exactly the way it was described to you in the first day. Nobody's pulled you into anything unexpected. Nobody's had to. And you start to wonder, quiet, at night, whether this is just how it goes for you. Whether some people get pulled forward, and some people just keep doing the job as described, forever. And whether you already know which one you are. You start noticing something else too. The difference between people who look rich and people who actually are. The ones who look rich are loud about it. The new car in the party. The trip everyone hears about before it even happened. The story retold at every dinner. A little more polished each time. You used to admire them. Now you're not sure. Because the people who are actually wealthy don't look like anything at all. They're quiet, almost invisible, driving something unremarkable, wearing something plain. Because their money isn't sitting where you can see it. It's somewhere working, compounding, growing, without needing an audience. And you start to wonder which version of rich you've been chasing this whole time. And whether you even knew there were two. Your friend takes his first real risk at 24. Not reckless, happy. He takes a little time, a little money, and puts both into a side project built around the skills he'd already studied. The shape of the bet is simple. If it fails, he loses a few months and a little cash. Nothing that builds. If it fails, there's no ceiling on what it becomes. You watch him do this, and your first instinct is to call it risky. He calls it something else. Asymmetric. Small, contained bouncer, uncapped ups. You've never thought about this. You've only ever thought about this as something you will, not something you should do. You've always waited for the right time, the sure thing, the guarantee that this will work before you commit to it. If nobody ever tells you that guarantees and real upside don't live in the same sense. The people who insist on certainty before they move are, without realizing, waiting for something that was never going to arrive. No matter how patient they are, no matter how long they hold out, you don't know yet that you've been doing it. You just know that you're still waiting. He isn't 26. He's not rich, not even close. But something has shifted, quietly, underneath the surface of his life. Two income streams now instead of one. Neither of them huge, but neither of them controlled entirely by someone else's mood, someone else's budget mood, someone else's decision made in a room and on. You still have exactly one stream. It arrives every 2 weeks at someone else's discretion, and you've never once questioned that arrangement because it's the only one you've ever known. The only one anyone showed. 18. His side project. The small, asymmetric bet he placed 2 years earlier, back when it looked like nothing, like a hobby, like a distraction, gets acquired. Not a headline-making fortune. Just enough to clear a debt he'd been carrying quietly, and enough to double what he'd already put into his own compounding investment. You hear about it second, the way you hear about most of his life. And your first thought is that he got lucky. That's the easiest thing to think. It's also the thing that lets you off the hook from asking what he would have needed to do 2 years earlier to be standing where he's standing now. It wasn't luck. It was a decision made years before it paid off. Sitting quiet, invisible, doing nothing dramatic, until suddenly it wasn't invisible. That's what luck usually is, if you look closely. A decision somebody else didn't understand yet, made by someone who wasn't waiting for permission to be right. Third, he's not flashy. And that's almost the whole story. His car is ordinary, paid off. Nothing anyone would notice in an apartment. His apartment is comfortable, not impressive. Nothing you'd photograph. If you met him today for the first time, you wouldn't guess anything about his life beyond what you could see. And what you could see would tell you almost nothing. That's not an accident. That's the best part. Somewhere along the way, his wealth stopped needing an audience. Right around the same time, it actually started belonging into something real. You're 32 now. And here's the part that's hard to sit. You never stopped working hard. Not once. You showed up. You did what was asked of you. Usually. Hard work gave you exactly what it always promised. No more and no less. Stable job, a decent title, a life that looks fine from the outside and feels quiet. Like something is still missing underneath. Nothing compounding in the background. Nothing working while you slept. Just you, still trading hours for dollars. The same trade you started at 22. Except now you're 30 and the trade hasn't changed. And here's the part that actually matters. The part almost nobody says out loud. The gap between you and him is never tapped. You're not less capable than he is. It was never even work ethic. Because you worked just as hard, maybe harder, on days he doesn't know about. The real difference was smaller and quieter than either of us. He stacked skills instead of repeating the same line for a decade. He thought in decades instead of paychecks, measuring his life in a different unit of time than the one you were using. And he took a handful of small, asymmetric bets. Nothing reckless, nothing that could break. Instead of waiting for a guarantee that was never, under any circumstances, going to introduce itself. Maybe you're reading this and it feels uncomfortably familiar. Not because your life has gone wrong, but because it's gone exactly the way you were told it should. And that's precisely the problem nobody around you. Maybe this feels like your story, your friends, your evenings spent resting instead of building, your one income stream. You're waiting for a sign that never came. That feeling isn't an accident. It's not your fault. And it's not too late. Right? The version of you that started at 22, the one who believed hard work alone for full form, is still available to start again today, at whatever age you're standing in life. So, the only thing that changed for him, the only real thing, the thing that made every other difference possible, is that at some point, he stopped asking whether hard work was enough. And he started asking a different question instead. What could he stack? What could he compound? What small bet could he place quietly, patiently, for long enough that nobody around him even noticed, until one day it was already done.